respected chair and invited poets. Welcome everybody. The first session of this literary festival is poetry session, presided over by Hampa Nagarajaya ji from India. Today the poets who will present their poems are Yusuf Muhammad ji from Bangladesh, Chhador Wangumu ji from Bhutan, Ramkrishna Perugu ji from India, Varsha Das ji from India, Vinod Joshi ji from India, Govinda Giri Prerna ji from Nepal, Bipuli Niroshani Hetiarachi from Sri Lanka, Nishalanka Dharamsena ji from Sri Lanka, and of course Hampa Nagarajaya ji. Now I request to poets for present your poems. 6 to 7 minutes is allotted for all the participants, so please follow the time limit. First, you introduce yourself and then recite your poems. Now I request Yusuf Muhammad ji to kindly present his poems. Yusuf ji. Oh, Yusuf is joining again. Yes, Yusuf ji, kindly introduce yourself and present your poems. Yusuf Muhammad ji. Yusuf Muhammad ji, are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yes, kindly introduce yourself and present your poems.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable chair to the session, distinguished intellectuals, guests, and audience. I am Yusuf Muhammad, joined this grand occasion from Chattogram, Bangladesh. I have already published 9 books of poetry and 5 edited books. I would like to opportunity to give hearty thanks to the organizers, especially Sahitya Academy, Foswal and dear writer Ojit Kaurji, and her team for giving me the scope to read this thesis, that is Doha, in this online event. It is mentioned here that Doha is also poetry.
Some technical problem occurred. His voice connection. Yusuf ji, hello. Then I request to Chhador Wangumu ji to kindly present his poems and introduce yours.
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yeah, please.
Right. Thank you so much for always ensuring that I am a part of this Foswal poetry sessions. It gives me immense pleasure to be part of it every time. I must tell you that you do not see me as I would normally appear during such occasions. Normally I wear my Bhutanese dress whenever, even if it is online. But today I'm not in my Bhutanese attire because I'm not in Bhutan. Actually, I'm in Delhi. I have come here for treatment and I'm in a hotel room just now. So if I cannot make it till the end of this session, I would like to apologize to everybody in advance. I could have easily returned to Ma Ajit ji, and told her that I'm here for treatment and I cannot make it to this session, but I didn't want to do that because I knew that would break her heart. And it would equally break my heart as well, not to be a part of this wonderful session that I have been a part of for many years now. To briefly introduce myself, because I know everybody in this session, we know each other now. We are almost like a family. But just so that the people who have joined us this year for this session knows me, I am Chadrongmu from Bhutan, and I basically write both prose and poetry. And Anupamji, like he mentioned earlier, has translated my book Phases, which is my only anthology of poetry into Hindi now. So it's available now. Right, it is now available as a Hindi book. Thank you so much for that privilege. So with that now, without wasting much time, I would like to read 3 very small poems that I have been mulling over during my stay here. It's been 10 days now in Delhi, and I have been in and out of the hospital. So looking at people, strangers walking with pain, with lots of stuff going on in their mind, I thought I would like to read this very short 3 poems that I have in with me just now. The first poem that I'm going to read out is titled Dear Stranger. Dear stranger, I was never to know. Do you know, in this lifetime and many more, you and I have met. In the places our invisible footprints met, the dust have risen up from there and flown away to the desert far away, where you know no one and I know none. And there, the specks of dust from our invisible footsteps dance in the eye of the storm, telling the story of our togetherness we shall never hear about. You were a story written in white, and I, a poem written in black. And in the pages where our alphabets met, we melted into rhymes of gray. Listen, on cold gray winter mornings, you can hear the cold misty air rise, singing the songs of longing our hearts sang. The birds have learned the song, and now the forest echoes it. Thank you. The next poem I have with me is titled Footprints. And like almost all of us, we have at some point of our lives, we have walked in the corridors of hospitals where you see people walking around with different emotions on their face, but mostly it is pain. So I've titled this poem, it's very short, titled Footprints. Many invisible footprints still tap their way in and out of this place. Some broken dreams walking to mend their way. Some dashed hopes walking to find miracles. Some unrequited love waiting to find love's blessed touch. Many invisible footprints still tap their way in and out all over this place. See if one day you come across my footprints too. Thank you. And if we still have time, one very short poem. It's titled Rebuilding. It's just few lines. I've titled it Rebuilding. Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much. So it's titled Rebuilding. In those dark nights, she built herself up, stacking the broken shards, building stories, storing dreams, sowing it with hope that someday, somewhere, a song will fill the crevices of this stacked up shards. That's me. Thank you so much. And Majid ji, thank you so much for calling out my name. I feel as if I've received your hug. Thank you.
Thank you, Chador ji. My request to Yusuf Muhammad ji, kindly recite his poems.
Sorry to say power cut, due to power cut, I could
No
not
problem.
continue
You please continue.
Now I am reading my distiches, that means Doha, translated by young writer Tamid Al-Jami. 1. You lit masses to play with fire. Hungry too is the fire. I drink the nectar of fire and air from the hydrant of desire. 2. Who do I look for? Who charmed himself and called my name from behind the sleep curtain? Who is it that instilled on his own in me just a secret vow to worship man? 3. The sunshine its beams for you is the moonshine. In your stars I sail my boat, the falls not to the dock behind. 4. I am my soulmate, I am my tremor, all your feelings, whims I shall humor. 5. I am my word, my own true guru, I went broke searching for you. 6. I am my ascetic, my force beyond measures, myself I humble, hail and treasure. 7. To my belong the merits, to me belongs the sin. O my mind, if you know me not, all is in vain. 9. By cutting off people, I turned a broken lunar. Being myself left out, I remain their shelter. 10. Who carries whose embers, I return alone, near and far. 12. I am my own begetter, I am my son. In my body, eros, art and ideas blend on. 13. I act selfless, I strike my own odd note. Who had accept me, who had get Radha's touch. 14. What winds drive our mind to throw caution to the wind, as Pharisaic foxes sip not in water but in blood? How many of them follow Allah, Buddha, Jesus, Ram, Krishna or God? Lo and behold, in the name of faith, how they bay for blood. In life's scattered dust and ashes, our sense of humanity gets buried. As we go on fatting, whose veins carry Ram or Rahim's blood. Without being a human being, you would not find your true self within, and will keep roaming fruitlessly across Goya, Kashi or Medina, snubbing the human Lord. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yusuf Mohammed ji. Now I request to Ramkrishna Peruku ji, kindly present.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please.
Namaskar to Sahitya Academy and Foswal teams who are organizing this great BIMSTEC Literature Festival. My salutations to most respected Ajit Kaur Maji. Namaskar. I am, for many years, I am much associated with Foswal, attended almost all festivals organized in Agra, Delhi and Lucknow. My name is Poet Laureate Dr. Perugu Ramakrishna. I live in Nellore, AP state of India. I write poetry both in Telugu and English languages. I am a retired GST officer, Government of Andhra Pradesh. I attended several international events and recited my poetry in many countries. My poems were published in several journals, and apart from writing poetry, I am now busy as a translator and editor. Critics says that I am a socially conscious humanistic poet. My wife, a teacher of Government of Andhra Pradesh, is also a poetess by her own right. I got several awards and was conferred honorary D.Litt in Prague, Czech Republic in 2016. I like to introduce some 2-3 lines in my mother language, Telugu. My first poem, Gudi Veedi. Gudi Veedi, ఆకాశం నేలకి వంగి ఆ గాలి గోపురం మీద తలెత్తుచున్న సప్త కలశాలను ముద్దాడడం చూస్తుంటాను. గోపురం గోళ్లను వదిలిన గుడి వీధిలో భక్తుల శిరస్సులపై నుండి ఎగిరే పావురాళ్ల సమూహాల్ని చూస్తుంటాను. This is a poem depicting the scenario of temple street, which particularly exists in South India. Temple street. I see the sky bend. I see the sky bend to the earth and kiss the 7 water pots that stand raising their heads on the temple arch. I see the flocks of pigeons that fly over the heads of the devotees, leaving their nests in temple arch. I see the devotees that meditate with the sacred namas, worriedly walking on the midday sun with bare feet. I keep the faith alive that you exist in the half-naked bodies beside the temple that stretch their hands and wet their dry lips with their moist tongues beside the puja material store. I wonder which sacred stone's great fortune it is that receives prayers on your behalf. I wonder which sculptor had carved you with such a beauty and divine brilliance, remembering your graceful blessings with his spiritual fervor and determination. I wonder how he molded a stone, pouring life in every fragment as a testimony to the whole creation. I see the sky again peeping at you when the multitude of devotees drown you in tides of sacred prayers at the crossroads of creation's tone and rhythm. Thank you. My second poem is about a recent war between Ukraine and Russia. Title, The Futility of War. When 2 hearts meant to embrace are blown into smithereens, when the green drapes meant to offer shade and turned into shrouds, a spell of doom is cast upon humanity. It's war that marks the history of mankind. Pointless become the quest of the living in the space yonder, or drowning the moonlight with the neon lights, or soaking the Sahara with endless showers. The ever-growing ruthless demon of greed and revenge seeks bloodbath, crushing and oppressing the righteous being. Dear warrior, heed the call of your conscience. Dear warrior, heed the call of your conscience. War is not the solution. Endeavor to sow seeds of friendship in the blood-soaked soil. For when joy smiles bloom, the winds shall proclaim your exoneration. The wind shall proclaim your exoneration. Thank you so much. Once again, my pranams to Azit Maji.
थैंक यू पेरगू रामकृष्णा जी। और अब मैं बहुत ही आदर के साथ आमंत्रित करता हूं आदरणीय वर्षा दास जी को। दीदी अनम्यूट कर लीजिए।
हाँ, अब आवाज आ रही है ना?
जी जी।
धन्यवाद। साहित्य अकादमी एवं अजीत जी को मेरा प्रणाम। आई एम रीडिंग दिस, well, I write in Gujarati, which is my mother tongue, and Hindi, and a little bit in English. And I've been a writer, translator, editor all my life. I'm going to read this poem. The title is When the Sand is the Border. Whether on this side of the border or on the other, sand of the same color is all over. This is the desert of Thar, where Manto's crazy character asked, which is Hindustan and which one is Pakistan? I also ask, on which land do I walk when the sand is the border? Faces are the same, so is the language. Who is right and who is wrong? Who will decide? Sand flies from here and settles there. It freely moves like the clouds and the rain. No one can tie it up. And yet, man draws lines, gets tied up by his own shackles. I wish I can become a seed, get dropped from a sparrow's beak, and sprout anywhere, like the clouds, sand, and the rain, on this side of the border or on the other. This earth is ours, so is the air, water, and the sky. We do look many, but we are one, on this side of the line or on the other, or even on this side of the ocean or on the other. Thank you. This is one poem and there is another. Do we have time for one more? Yeah, thank you.
All the time for you, Varsha.
Sorry, Ajitji.
All the time for you, Varsha.
All the time. Thank you so much. Very kind of you, but we want to hear so many others also. I'll read just one more. Its title is Refugees. While fumbling in the dark, one realizes the importance of light. When the throat is parched, one desperately seeks water. One doesn't value what one has. Only in its absence one craves. Citizenship, nation, and nationality, they mean little till you lose them. People flee from life in a war-torn country. They are uprooted with immense brutality. A safe haven suddenly crumbles. Like helpless beggars, they cross the borders, enter unknown nations, artists and technocrats, labor force and business class. All are leveled and labeled simply as refugees. Thank you very much.
धन्यवाद वर्षा दास जी। इसी
Thank you.
क्रम में मैं बहुत ही आदर के साथ आमंत्रित करता हूं प्रोफेसर विनोद जोशी जी को। सर अनम्यूट कर लीजिए प्लीज।
नमस्कार अजीत जी, आपको और साहित्य अकादमी दोनों को मैं धन्यवाद देता हूं। आई एम विनोद जोशी, a poet writing in Gujarati language, the most vital language of the western part of India. I have been served Maharaja Krishna Kumar Singh Ji University of Bhavnagar as a professor and head of the department of Gujarati, and as a vice chancellor too of the same university. There are 40 books and many awards to my credit. I would like to recite the translation of my Gujarati poems into English. The title of the first poem is I, that is me. I hailed the mountains by their peaks. I held the mountains by their peaks and flung them into the sea. Then in one gulp swallowed all the salt waters in this earth. I folded the sky many times over and slipped into my eyes. Before shutting my eyes tight, I breathed the wind and made it stand steady in my navel. I grabbed in my fist the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, and all the constellations. So now there is nothing outside. Where am I? The earth has disappeared. I searched for my prop in one moment. All of a sudden, I am unmovable. In another, I roar, turn into limitless expanse, spreading all around. I hiss wildly. I spin round and round. Then I open my eyes and see the same world out there. I close my eyes and now I see the same world inside, so close, within my reach. So, where am I now? The translation of this poem was done by Pratishtha Pandya. And now, another poem which has been translated into English by Dhwani Joshi. The title of the poem is At My Will. The moment I took my first breath, my death deserted me, giving me my life without asking for my consent. I had simply taken a breath, not asked for life. But at the moment, my death evaded me. And from that moment on, it has kept running away from me. Now it says, I will come back, but of my own free will. You shall be welcomed, I tell my death. Not if you come of your own will. You gave me my first breath. Now I will give you my last breath at my own will. Thank you so much.
धन्यवाद विनोद जोशी जी. Now I request to Gobind Giri Prerna ji from Nepal. Gobind ji. Now I request to Vipuli Niroshani Hetia Rachi ji. Vipuli ji, are you hearing me? Yeah, please.
Sri Lanka. Same, she is from Sri Lanka.
I'm Vipuli Niroshini from Sri Lanka. I have been in India for this literary festival in 2018-19. I think introducing myself, I think I have published several books by collections of poetry and even for children, and some other books for, I think, all are not poetry and stories as well. And I write short stories as well. I think The other thing is I'm a teacher by profession, and I still write for children, and I work for children. Once I was awarded by the State Literary Award for the best children book. That's it. So I'm presenting my poems. The first one is Balachandra. Balachandra. Shots fired, shattering dreams, like stars displaced, scattered. Home in the north sky, is it the rabbit in the moon you see? Home in the north sky, is it the rabbit in the moon you see? Translated by Shirani Rajapaksa. The Balachandran means young moon, even in Sinhala and Tamil. The other one is, we should know that Balachandran is the youngest. He was the youngest son of a LTT leader. That's it. Then my second one. Iron Lady. Iron Lady. It is in number 10 Downing Street, London, but London was the residence of Margaret, a tiny but made of corrugated iron sheets. And wood is what she calls home. No metal wheels, no Maruti to call her own. Margaret moves from house to house, collecting old newspapers, pieces of scrap metal she sells by weight. The businessman comes on strong. His grip is as hard as iron. She breaks free from his embrace, grabs an iron rod and strikes like a furious leopard. He falls at her feet. Iron Lady, her steady arm speaks. Her iron body hefts. Her iron heart melts. Her iron heart melts. Sorry. Frequently, a determined woman. She bears grief. She's an iron that smells, yet doesn't bend. She's an iron that smells, yet doesn't bend. She's like a flame. Margaret is her name. She is sister, aunt, mother in her realm. She hurts, she shines, she warms, she burns, she's firm. She's the Iron Lady. The Iron Lady, translated by Shirani Rajapaksa, one of the poets in Sri Lanka. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vipuli ji. Now I request to Nishansala Dharmasena ji from Sri Lanka.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nishansala Dharmasena Bartholomeus. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me for this wonderful festival. I would also like to thank Mrs. Kanchana Priyakanta for nominating me for this event. Giving a brief introduction about myself, I work as a lecturer in the field of telecommunication engineering within the technical education sector in Sri Lanka. With my basic degree in information technology, master's in information technology, I moved towards postgraduate diploma in international relations, as well diploma in journalism and diploma in translation and interpretation. With that, looking towards my writing career, this is my second poetry collection. From this, I will be reciting 3 poems. My first was Fleeting Moments, published by Surasa Publishing House in the year 2019, and it was nominated for the Best Poetry category in Godege Literary Award in year 2020. So I published My Womb, A Barren Land with the publishing house Queen of Sea Publishers in the year 2022. Looking into the first poem, War and Romance is Intertwined. So this is one of them. Old Pier by the River. Old pier by the river, where the cafe was, I walk among the old ruins of our memories, among the bygone days, Our cafe has crumbled, all turned into dust. Creepers are weaving, maybe our memories. Only fireflies decorate the air. Where the chandeliers used to stand, and in your arms I used to dance to the beat of jazz melodies. All that is gone now. Nothing remains of the flowers you picked to greet me at the door of a cafe by the river. Wilderness took over as war glided in. Only the ruins remain of a bombarded world. As for souls who used to breathe in river air, they float in once in a while, as if to greet their own memories through worlds of time and compare. Next poem looks into 1989. It was the insurgency era in Sri Lanka. 1989. It was 1989, a time of insurgency in Sri Lanka. We escaped into Kandy when they came in bashing through the doors to take away my father. For 3 months, we lived in Kandy, a relative's place. Every morning, holding onto our father's hand, we would walk along the streets, looking at the few shops opened. At the end of the road, there was a river. Its name I never knew, with a broken wooden bridge. As we walked tentatively along the bridge, it would rock with the weight and the wind. Dead. Dead fish floating all over the river's surface. That was all you saw for miles. Dead fish floating. Just like all those who were murdered, thrown to the rivers to float away into the sea, never to return back home, whose names were forgotten in the landscape of loss, whose stories were never written. And now, more than decades later, that small child who saw dead bodies floating in River Nilwala recalls death. Floating in an unknown river in Kandy, in a time of insurgency, more than 60,000 perished for a lost cause, never to return home. My last poem is about all of us. It's called Sentimental Pieces. Falling like the fallen angels. Floating like the crowned flowers. Aren't we all such sentimental pieces, made out of enigmatic galactic ashes, in a virtual world, losing our sense of proportion? Nude pictures, sensual conversations, floating and rotating, bringing the desire over galactic ashes. Ashes filled with mythical wagers, and here I am, standing in front of a virtual world after leaving my galactic spaces, wandering like a gypsy from heart to heart, carrying my lost sense of proportion. Aren't we all just sentimental pieces? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nishansala Dharmsena ji. And now the chair, respected Hampa Nagarajaya ji. Respected sir, Vivan, sir, please kindly unmute yourself. Yes, sir. Yes.
Hello, can you hear?
Yes,
can you hear
yes.
me? Hello, thanks, Govind Giri Prerana ji. Yeah, you have really helped me and made my work easy. Well, I'm a retired professor from Bangalore University, and I am just 87 years young. Well,
Respected sir, kya Govind Giri Prerana ji is with you?
Hello. Yeah.
Sir, Govind Giri Prerana ji is with you?
Okay. What did you say? You're now Govind Giri Prerana is not.
Okay.
Yes.
Please continue, sir.
Okay. Shall I continue? Yes.
Please, sir.
On behalf of all the poets who participated in this excellent poetry session. It is my pleasure to place on record my deep sense of gratitude to the Foundation of SARC Writers and Literature and also the Sahitya Academy, New Delhi. Our special gratitude is reserved to celebrated Punjabi writer Dr. Ajit Kaur ji, who usually I call her as Akka in Kannada, which means elder sister. She has been very kind to me since more than a decade, and who is a source of inspiration for all of us. She has taken a lot of care to make this more meaningful and successful. In this poetry session, which is part of the Foswal Literature Festival of 3 days, Mr. Yusuf Muhammad from Bangladesh, Chadur Wangmo from Bhutan, Perugu Ramakrishnaji Garu, and Varsha Das, Vinod Joshi ji, all the three from India, and Vipul Niroshmi, and then Nisansala Dharmasena from Sri Lanka have made the event most memorable. And then in all literary conferences or sessions, poetry session is the climax, and the audience are very receptive. Today's poetry session did not disappoint us, and this did not disappoint even the great expectation of the organizers. Therefore, I spare no words to express my happiness for all the poets. Now it is my turn, and then to present a poem of my choice. I have selected a short but sweet stanza from my epic titled Charu Vasanta. I wrote this Desi classic in the year 2003, and so far it has become so popular that it has been translated into Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi, Malayalam, Punjabi, Kashmiri, Telugu, Bengali, Oriya, Rajasthani, Sanskrit, Prakrit, Banjara, and English. Well, I will read this stanza from Hindi translation, which was translated to Hindi from Kannada by Mahir Mansoor and Shakira Khanum. Here it is. मंदिर में जो होती लूट उसको भगाओ, बात बात पर दक्षिणा जो मांगते हैं उसकी पूजा अनैतिक। यह पूजा तो नहीं कुछ और है, संसार की आंख खुले वैशाली कथा की ओर। स्वर्ग पाना हर एक की कामना है, धरती पर स्वर्ग बनाना सबसे बस की बात नहीं। हर कोई बन जाता है दिल से साधु सात्विक, पर जीवित रहकर भोजन पानी देने की इच्छा भी मनुष्य की हो। कई देवी देवताओं की पूजा से बढ़कर भक्तों को दान करना ही विश्वास है। सराहनीय है विशाल हृदय अपार, दान मेरी बात ही सत्य, मेरा भगवान ही सत्य। हमारा देवी देवता तुम्हारा देवी देवता से है महान के गर्व, और घमंड में कश्मकश में पड़कर खो बैठोगे तुम सुख समृद्धि और शांति। ऊंच नीच का भेदभाव, एक आग का शोला है, दुखी जानता की बाधा कौन लो, लेखा जोखा, जन सामान्य लोगों का आदर करो, हर धर्म को अपने धर्म बराबर, असहमत विचारों को भी सहनशीलता से सुनो। जहां सहनशीलता करुणा, वहां होगा आनंद रहे, आदर्श और अपनापन, अपने संबंध, अपने मित्र, तभी होगा देश हमारा शांति दूत। क्रूरता, हिंसा, रक्तपात और असत्य का है रास्ता कच्चा। आशाओं में ढूंढो मार्ग, छोड़ो ऐसे घृणित विधि विधान, संदेह, संशय कायर का अस्त्र है, बांधो इसको अपनी गिराह में। प्रतापी उत्साही कभी न होंगे कायर, जाति धर्म की लिपापोती नहीं है मनुष्य के योग्य, आदर देंगे उसी को लोग जिनमें हो चरित्र। आराधन करना सामान्य बात है लोगों की, चीनी ही पर्याप्त है क्या मिठाई के लिए, नमक, मिर्च, साग, सब्जी सब चाहिए। संपूर्ण भूमंडल है एक पाकशाला, स्वादिष्ट खाद्य यहाँ कई, शिव, वैष्णव, जैन, बुद्ध, आजीवक, शरण, श्रमण, ईसाई, मुसलमान और सिख, सभी धर्म का रहे अपने अपने विश्वास पर। करें भक्ति मनचाही, पर भारत माता की याद दिल में बसाए रखें, और रहें द्वेष और ईर्ष्या से दूर। देश के रथ को आगे बढ़ाते रहें, हिंदू देश कभी टूट न पाए। वंदे मातरम की घोषणा गूंजती रहे हिमालय तक। धर्म कोई भी हो, यहाँ रहे समता का राज। जिस पर चलना हो सुलभ, रहे संसार के घर का झंडा ऊंचा। धन्यवाद। Thank you very much.
Why don't you read one more poem? One more poem.
हमपा सर एक और कविता सुनना चाह रही हैं अजीत
अक्का
जी। He wants sir one more poem sir. Then बहुत ही अच्छी कविताएं हमको सुनने को मिली, और हमने आदरणीय हम्पा नागराजय्या जी, यूसुफ मोहम्मद जी, छादुर वांगमू जी, पेरगू रामकृष्णा जी, वर्षा दास जी, विनोद जोशी जी, विपुली निरोशानी हेतिया राची जी, निशंसला धर्मसेना जी की रचनाएं सुनी। दरअसल हमारे साथ आशीष नंदी जी जुड़े हुए हैं। सर क्या आप हमें सुन पा रहे हैं?
हाँ जी
सर, किसी कारण से पिछले उद्घाटन सत्र में आशीष जी से कुछ तकनीकी कारणों से वो जुड़ नहीं सके थे। मैं आप सबकी अनुमति से अनुरोध करता हूं बहुत ही आदर के साथ आशीष नंदी जी से कि वे हमें संबोधित करें। आप सभी जानते हैं, ही इज ए वेल नोन पॉलिटिकल साइकोलॉजिस्ट, सोशल थियोरिस्ट एंड क्रिटिक। He has 20 published books, to his credit on different subjects beside many articles in different anthologies and magazines. He was senior fellow and director of the Center for the Study of Developing Societies. He has been received the Fuqua ASEAN Cultural Prize and appeared on the list of the top 100 public intellectuals pool of the Foreign Policy magazine. Respected sir, Adaniya Ashish Nandi ji.
Okay. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Well, I have been listening to this session. I missed out because the Wi-Fi failed. I couldn't even make a complaint about it because the complaint also had to go through Wi-Fi. So I had to move from my home to India International Center Library, which was open for even on a Sunday. And I'm sitting in a corner of that library so that I don't disturb the other readers using the library and still have a conversation with you. I have heard some of the persons speaking. I have been basically interested in human nature and usually divided my time over the last 50 odd years between human destructiveness and human creativity. When I get tired of human destructiveness, I go back to India, human creativity, what that which is constructive and a negation of destruction. And when I get tired of hearing nice things and even creative things, I go back to human violence and destruction. I have only a very few very specific points to make to an audience where primarily everybody is in some ways a creative artist, writer, thinker, poet, and so on and so forth. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that we have here a huge diversity, not only in India, but also in Southeast Asia, and perhaps also in many of the adjacent societies also. I remember once talking to Raimundo Panikkar, who had good acquaintance with Latin America. And when I was saying that India has enormous diversity and we have to learn to live with it, he said, yes, but that is the fate of many other countries, which people don't recognize. Brazil, where he has worked, Brazil also has 200 cultures there, right in that society, which is probably in size less than 10% of India. So diversity is global. There are only very few countries which are not that diverse, which are more homogeneous. Now, in this world of diversity, it is extremely difficult to protect the diversity, even when we are talking of diversity, because there is always a temptation to somehow homogenize. The state systems which have come to the world in the last 400 years, it first came out, took a concrete form in mid-17th century in Europe, and is now called nation-state system. The United Nations is built on nation-state system. And we are all supposed to have nation states. For this, some countries feel that they had a nation already, and therefore they decided to have a nation state. But other countries, particularly in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, we had to be a nation and build a state. And there has not been any criticism of that, or very little criticism of that. I belong to one of those who do not take the nation state systems uncritically. And I have my reasons for that. But I first want to tell you that it is very interesting that the only in these 3 continents I have mentioned, only Africa, on Africa, a book was published which said that the nation state system was a curse in Africa, because no African state has nations. They had communities. And this community were diverse, but communities also in another level were living together for not only decades or centuries, but for millennia. How did they do it? In what way is Africa a functioning entity to the extent it is, without that awareness of a nation state? And this book, in fact, said that this nation state system has done a lot of harm to it. Indeed, even in India, Rabindranath Tagore once said that we are not a nation, we are a country of communities, and communities intersect. You are a member of not one community, but number of communities, and this intersecting communities give us a sense of unity. It is not that immunity is imposed, but it is that community has emerged over the centuries. And this is primarily in South Asia, a product of medieval South Asia. He said it at a time when it was fashionable to call the Middle Ages Dark Ages in Europe, and India too thought that they should call their medieval period Dark Ages. But if you look carefully, some others felt, and Gandhi also was subsequent to join the ranks, that both Tagore and Gandhi, 2 tallest figures in South Asia's modern history, both felt that medieval India produced a formula, or not a formula, I should say, that's the wrong word to use, an ambience, an atmosphere where living together in this enormous diversity in India had a comfortable place without perpetually being worried about who will secede and who will not secede, who will ditch you or who will not, who will be rebellious and who is not. Because nation building and state formation has always have been a bloody affair. So this is the first point I want to make. It is my belief in this context that the artists, the writers, and the intellectuals in general have a different kind of responsibility. Yeah, I suppose that I can define this as a responsibility to oneself. not responsibility to a state. Many people will be tempted to say we have a responsibility for the people with whom we are living. I would not also say admit that, because the history of the last 200 years shows that the attempt to build states, nations and states have been always done with the name of people. For the sake of people, for the sake of welfare of the people, for the will of the oppressed people, you are supposed to do certain things. And ultimately it turns out that what you did was following your own interests or your self-interest or looking for personal glory or glory of a particular community, particular institutional structure. In fact, the second half of the 20th century taught us that there can be no utopias which can be without the consequence of creating a dystopia. Namely, all so-called successful utopias turn out to be new kinds of oppressive systems. I have not seen exception to this rule. Sometimes maybe small city towns, city states escape this, or even small states can be this way. But they are not the ones which count in global affairs. But we have seen major ideologies fail. We have seen major institutional reforms fail. We have seen major projects of equity, justice, and so on and so forth fail, and ultimately turn out to be oppressive systems and collapse by their own weight. After 80 years, Soviet Union turned out to be a dystopia, not a utopia. In the meanwhile, in the name of the utopia, you have liquidated something like 65 million people. And not only that, it is a good lesson for us that after this long tenure of more than something like 75 years, even the touch of socialism did not remain in that country. It became a primitive capitalism, which cannot even give a respectful capitalism like some of the smaller countries have become. So this is a lesson. And this is not only the case of that, this is all utopias. Fortunately, something like Gandhian utopia, Gandhi never promoted any utopia, but nevertheless, that has never taken that shape because it was never actualized. Never actualized. Now we hear from our present regime that the previous 70 years was a very oppressive system run by the other opposition parties, including, actually they don't exempt even the earlier role of the same party. When Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the prime minister, they said last 70 years, 75 years, there have been no good work. Now, which tells you that there is always this problem. So here I would suggest that our primary responsibility is should not be motivated by either ideology, for which I have developed a deep dislike now, because every ideology produces its pathological forms. However grand it might look when you publish it as a book or a manifesto or a beautiful lecture, in actual reality, it becomes oppressive and demands unqualified obedience. So, and even with saying that ideology ensures responsibility to certain kind of groups, always that responsibility for the certain groups turns into an oppressive responsibility for the other groups. This is the logic. This is the natural logic of a nation state system. We need a different kind of system. I propose, however unpopular it might be, or however dangerous it might seem, that responsibility of the writer, the painter, the poet, the sculptor, all art forms and all literary forms, it is clear, are basically a responsibility that the artist or the creative functionary in this process, the creative person has to himself or herself. And that responsibility does not demand that to actualize your responsibility, what you have set for yourself, can go with attempt to strangle the voice of others. Because you have a responsibility to yourself only, and you are not concerned with what others are doing. Now, this is because I have learned from my studies of creativity that certain kinds of creativity, actually almost all kinds of creativity on which research has been done, and sometimes excellent empirical research, like prediction of what kind of people can be considered creative, so much as to get the Nobel Prize, and what kind of people are first-class teachers and first-class, very famous professionals never get it, because data shows that up to IQ of something roughly around 120 plus minus 10, the creative person's creativity and intelligence go together. That means if your IQ is around 120 plus minus 10, then your creativity also can go with it. But after that, the creativity curve goes in another direction, and the knowledge curve, intelligence curve goes another way. They diverge, because that creativity at that point, after that point, is not dependent on not intelligence. So this is by way of thing, but I am going to suggest that this requires, and that is my third point now, that which requires that the artist or the poet have to learn to some extent to surrender himself or herself to the work she is doing, what she is creating. That requires a different kind of responsibility. My favorite example is that of Srinivas Ramanujan, the Indian mathematician. He used to say that when he dreamt of goddess Namakkal, or his village goddess in Tamil Nadu. And the goddess in the dream opened her tongue, and on the tongue he will find written the identities. So when he would wake up, he will copy those identities, and that was his source of creativity. Now that was considered very irrational at that time, and even his discoverer the famous mathematician G.H. Hardy thought this is absolutely bogus. He was undertrained, and yet he did so with natural genius. But that doesn't mean that this we have to believe that. I don't think that is the way to look at it. I often have said this, that if you look at it as a psychologist, which I am actually, then I would suggest that Srinivas Ramanujan's dream was a projection of a part of himself in the form of the goddess. That his mind or brain, or however, whatever you want to say, his self, his personality, has set up this sacred dream to cope with the fact that he was discovering things to which he had no clue himself. It was intuitive. It is an instinctive, intuitive discovery. And he had to ascribe a sacred meaning to it. But that sacred self, that sacred meaning was actually a part of his own self. It was his projection. It's a part of his own self which has separated from him in his dream. I can put it in a more complex way, but at the moment, this is the way argument I'm putting forward. So every poet, I mean, I have heard people reciting poets today. Every poet has a moment when he feels or she feels that what he's writing is not only he is writing, he is being written through. And he is being written through. Often, many have openly said in the case of painting, for example, that he is written through by his painting, through his poem. And actually, the poem writes itself as he feels, as if, or she feels as if that that his poetry has taken over the process of creation, and he is just an instrument. Every great poet, in some way or other, has acknowledged this also, indirectly, sometimes. Some uncomfortably and some comfortably. So this is what, if Ramanujan can show this in the mathematical sense, but it is not unbelievable that it holds in other parts of the world of art and literary creation and so on and so forth.
आशीष सर, क्षमा कीजिएगा, मुझे रुकना पड़ रहा है क्योंकि समय की हमारे सीमा है और 2 बज गए हैं। हमें चूंकि अगला कार्यक्रम भी इसके तुरंत ही बाद है, तो चाहते हैं कि
okay, I will take a wind up in 2-3 minutes more. Okay,
sir.
So I would just end by saying that I think he has a good point, that I'm taking too much of time. So I would propose that under socialization or under that partial or incomplete training is often a clue to creativity. I say this because the great philosophers of our time have often under-socialized in philosophy. Similarly, the great, and for example, Sigmund Freud was not a psychologist. He was a neurologist and physiologist who turned to psychology, and he changed the face of modern psychology. Marx was not an economist, and his political economy was not a part of his. He was basically a philosopher. So you can see it for myself what I'm trying to imply. And not only this under socialization is helpful because you are not over socialized and therefore stuck, not a victim of your knowledge, but your knowledge helps you to be creative, but it is not interfering with it. So that's called under socialized or deprofessionalized. So that deprofessionalization, existence of certain playfulness is absolutely vital. And also important is this, that one of the best predictors of creativity is this, that the androgynous self of which is represented in Indian traditions like Ardhanarishwara is basically also a justification of a existence of femininity in men and masculinity in women, because that androgynous touch makes excellent predictor of creativity in arts and sciences both. Thank you very much for your patience.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आशीष नंदी जी। ये उद्घाटन सत्र का बीज वक्तव्य था जो हमने इस सत्र में सुना। हम पुनः इस सत्र के सभी कवियों के प्रति आभार व्यक्त करते हैं साहित्य अकादमी की ओर से और फाउंडेशन ऑफ सार्क राइटर्स एंड लिटरेचर फोसवाल की तरफ से। हमारा अगला सत्र 2:15 पर शुरू होगा जो फिक्शन सेशन है और इसमें शेलिना हुसैन, रामकुमार मुखोपाध्याय, जयंती नाइक, रंजना निरूला और सेलिना जी यहाँ उपस्थित होंगी। मैं आप सबके प्रति पुनः आभार व्यक्त करता हूं और नमस्कार करता हूं। धन्यवाद।